Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is January 4, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with David J. Simons. Is that right, David?
That's me. Yes, that is
David,
me.
where in the heck are you calling in from?
New York, Chestnut Ridge, New York.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
What is the best thing for a human being?
Yep.
Well, I guess to be alive.
I like that. Louis Buñuel said, long live the living. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Telepathically.
I love that answer. I get that very rarely. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Why do they collect or gather information?
Yeah.
Because that is their nature.
Right. So you would say it's in us innately to do this. It's more innate than invented.
Yes, that is our nature. We are communicative animals. We are not stones or trees, but living sentient beings. And we have a need to communicate, and we interpret what we see and hear around us. So we transmit and receive.
Very good. You're anticipating a lot of our themes. Thank you. So do thoughts create emotions?
Absolutely.
Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
think it.
Yeah, Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it. And McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. But I've had a slew of people recently say, until I think it. Can humans think without language?
Yes, yes. And I read a interview with Temple Grandin.
Yes.
You know who that is? She was the an autistic savant, PhD, and what's the name? That doctor wrote about her, a psychologist from Mars. But anyway, she said autistic people think in images and relationships of images rather than in words. So it's a nonverbal kind of perception.
Yeah, in fact, Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. David, what do you do when language doesn't work, when language breaks down?
Silence.
I like that. This is a stupid question. No, it's both, and it depends. But your general observations of humans in general, are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
Let me think about that.
Fine.
That's the answer, I guess.
Oh, let me think about that. I like that answer. You know, I'll tell you, 80% of people say we're more feeling beings, but one friend of mine wants to be a smarty pants. He goes, most people say, I think we're more feeling. They literally say that. I think we're more feeling. And he says, I feel we're more thinking. So here's two questions from Alan Turing in the 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
If coughing is, then thinking is. There was a band called Soul Coughing.
Yes, I know that.
You've heard of them?
Of course. Yeah, I love them.
So if they can cough, then I guess they can think, right?
The second Turing question is, can machines think?
Can what?
Can machines think?
Think. Probably not, just by the definition of what it means to think. They have a process they go through as probably a mathematical or mechanical process, or a combination of those two. So I don't think I wouldn't say that is thinking,
Yeah.
but just a process.
Process. David, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Well, it could go either way. If if the meaning of something is like really dreadful, I think I would opt for the happiness avenue.
Yeah. I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says, happiness doesn't necessarily last, meaning does. So it's like all these things there. It's the way we conceive what we think the word means. And so I appreciate your involvement here. The next question is, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
Is consciousness there bubbling away, or are we creating it?
No, are we detecting it? Is it bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we creating it?
Consciousness.
Yeah.
I guess we're creating it.
Yeah.
I guess so. Otherwise, how would we know that it's there?
There you go. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Thought.
There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right.
Yeah, thought.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded to her and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Well, that's kind of like the what was it, Einstein's quote that you can't fix a problem with the same using the same elements that caused it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Search for new tools to fix it. But I don't know. Sometimes old tools work really well. Sometimes you can just bludgeon something and hey, that worked.
Yeah.
Right.
But you can erase the, again, you put basically what I'm asking is, what tool do you gravitate to? You can drop the word new if you want.
What tool do I gravitate to? Do you mean a three-dimensional tool?
Can be tangible or non-tangible. Yeah. I get a lot of different answers in this regard. So, usually when people hear the word tool, they think it's tangible, but it's not necessarily,
A tool could be a strategy, right?
Exactly. It can be philosophy, religion could be a tool. One person said intuition,
Yeah. Or suggestion, hypnotic subliminal suggestion, I think, is a really good tool.
Hypnotic subliminal suggestion. Well, we're going to, you got ESP because we're going to get into that. But first, let's do this one. What new toy do you suggest?
Toy.
Yeah.
Not tool.
Well,
Not
you can,
instrument?
you see, you can, I mean, people can differentiate between tool and toy. It's that I asked tool for so many years, and then somebody said, well, how about a toy? And I thought, well, now I'll start asking people what new toy do they suggest?
Well, I've been saying that the chainsaw is my favorite new instrument.
Right.
Not say that's a toy. That is not a toy. It's a very potentially dangerous, tool, but it's also like an instrument. You can use it for self-expression, the chainsaw.
Yeah.
You can use it to sculpt something, but also to diminish something in size, to make empty space. Like I had this photo of a tree that fell down in my yard, and I cut the middle of it out. So you just see what would have been the bottom and the top, now that it's horizontal. But I created empty space with that tool, with that instrument, and it does make a lot of sound, of course. And like any instrument, you have to learn the technique of it, and it really does something. So it's at the end, it's very gratifying instrument.
Yeah. No, I agree. I saw a lecture by one of the Runaways, Joan Jett's first rock band, and she retired from the music business, and all she does now is sculpt wood, sculpt logs with chainsaws.
That is an art form. That is an art form.
It's sort of similar to the buzz of the electric guitar, rock guitar. So, what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Am I worried? Maybe I'm not worried.
It's good. Not worrying is good. Okay, so here's the question you anticipated. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. And, by artists, I mean musicians, painters, poets, writers. They're the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So, David, I asked you the question McLuhan probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Wait, back up there. There's something that you said that that didn't make sense to me. I mean,
Okay.
the definition of what an antenna is, transmitting and receiving, and then you said something that I don't understand, or how that got into the equation.
Yeah, it's sort of like Pound the poet was telling McLuhan that artists are the antenna of the race.
Right.
And they're almost like doing radar, or there's like you said, hypnotic subliminal suggestion. Those were your three words that are similar. They're broadcasting and detecting, so they detect these hypnotic subliminal effects of our inventions.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, a lot of people don't understand that cars might enhance private. Say it again.
Okay, that's the problem of our inventions.
Yeah.
The artists are the antenna of the race in terms of our inventions.
Well, not exclusively, but I'll give you an example for a car. Cars are enhancing or intensifying more than just easy transportation, fans transportation. They're intensifying and enhancing private mobility. So we're all in these steel containers by ourselves in general, it separates us. We're not like a pack or a herd. So then artists might do art about cars. David Smith makes sculptures out of cars or something that reveal or sort of tell a different story about how cars are shaping our behavior.
Okay.
So when artists do their thing, they might not even know why they're doing it, but they're sort of exposing these hypnotic subliminal effects. And so in general, humans ignore these probes that the artists are putting out there. And the question is why do people ignore? I mean, I ignore them, you ignore them, everybody ignores them. And some people go, well, no, artists don't ignore them. But what I'm not trying to say we're superior. I'm just saying artists partly do this with their art. And then why do people ignore seeing these hidden psychic effects being broadcast to them?
Oh, well, sometimes it could be very, painful or revelatory that, oh, is that what I'm doing? I'm helping to destroy the planet by turning on my gas-eating car, all the emissions that are coming out. Also, the car, well, you said you're in it alone and it's not a herd, but we know that the cars do move in herds, like
they do, but the humans,
right?
The humans are like in a subway or a bus. We're more like close together and we're moving in a herd. But you're right. It can be expounded. I'm not trying to talk in absolutes. I'm just giving, trying my best to expound.
I know. I'm finding the exceptions to everything that you're saying.
But that's good. That's what I want. I mean, it's basically me and Jerry and David versus the wording on the questions. We're trying to work together and shape the way the questions are worded. So sometimes people go, well, like this woman a couple months ago, I says, is it more this or more that? And she goes, the word more doesn't function in your question. And I was like, great. So I don't dispute it. I like people to tear apart my questions and like, let's psychoanalyze the question so that we can move the project forward and like maybe exchange ideas.
Okay. If I may address the quote, the McLuhan quote, I see it as like a precog. The artist's antenna is like a precognition. Like we can see where this is going. You can easily just draw a line from what's happening now, what happened before in whatever particular area we're discussing. I mean, you brought up cars, but it could be styles of art, of painting or sculpture, or our appreciation of what is art or definition of what is art. The artist as a precog in a Philip K. Dick sense of envisioning the future, right? You're getting the antenna, the artist's antenna is reaching waves, gravitational waves from the future, and a so-called future, because it's all one big continuum, depending on where you are in that continuum. And sometimes the artist is, they're here now, but part of them maybe is in the future, or for many people, it is in the past. They live in the past, and their music or their art describes the past. But I think the artist's antenna, envisioning, picking up waves of possibility from the future.
Yeah, you evoked Wyndham Lewis's line, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So it's sort of it encompasses that whole all at onceness. Bo Zappa and in James Joyce said, all times are happening now. Yeah.
Okay, you brought up Zappa, and I'm going to bring up Zappa's mentor, Edgar Varese, who said the artist is never ahead of his time. The public is behind the times.
Yes, it's good. Yeah, Martha Graham said great artists aren't ahead of their time. They are their times. Yes. But I love that you brought up Edgar Varese. and we're going to get into music soon. Do artists have moral obligation?
Well, everyone has a moral obligation.
Yeah.
Everyone does.
Yeah. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I don't know why you have the word more in there.
Well, are you afraid of yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, some people go, I'm not afraid of ideas, but it's
I'm not afraid of anything. Just throw
good.
it at me.
That's good. I like that. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
One early memory, not the earliest one, but a memory that I like to go to. My go-to memory is I'm 8 years old. I'm on a bicycle. I rode down to the park, holding on to a fence overlooking a baseball field. And I'm thinking, I'm 100 years old. I feel
Wow.
like 100 years old. I've been here forever.
That is heavy. I've never heard anything like that. Do you think memory is more a curse or more a blessing?
That totally depends what your memory is. You know, selective ignorance, you know, there's sometimes we just want to forget something that is so painful. And we can maybe succeed at that. And other times, what was the question?
Yeah, is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Yeah, other times, like, it could be, yeah, anything in between.
Yep. Tell me someone within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Well, I like to say that my Uncle Irving Peckler, my mother's youngest brother, came back from the Korean War, having gone to Japan afterwards and gotten a black belt in judo or karate or whatever. And then he would bring these interesting things home to our house, like an embroidered Japanese silk jacket or a vibraphone. And I was so small, like I had to stand up on a ladder in order to reach the keys of the vibraphone. But he was the kind of guy that would just pick up any instrument, pick up a guitar and start playing something. And the same with the vibes and all that. So, I told him that he was a big influence on me musically because he could just, he had that access. He could hypnotize a chicken.
Nice.
By drawing a line on a piece of paper and putting the chick's beak on the line. Putting your beak on the line. There's a lesson there. Put your beak on the line, and then you are hypnotized, I guess. Or maybe it was just a magic show, or maybe that happens to all chickens, regardless of their sensibility or lack of. And later on in life, when he decided to take guitar lessons, then he couldn't play anymore. He lost his natural ability, but he's good a harmonica player. And I'm going to visit him in Florida next week, actually.
How cool. Yeah. One anecdote, Flannery O'Connor, the writer, taught her chickens how to walk backwards.
How did she do that?
I don't know, but there's footage of them doing it on YouTube, but how she did it, I don't know. And there's a documentary about her and there's books about her, but I haven't read them or seen it. But now that was really well done. How about outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what was that impact?
Well, I won't say the greatest impact.
Yeah.
But just someone who had a big impact on me was Frank Zappa,
Wow. What did you get? How did Frank shape your behavior?
your former employer. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I studied Frank for over 50 years now. But so in just a few words, how did he shape your behavior?
Well, permission to be as out there as you can be. And that includes everything from, from the embrace of the Edgar Varese and anything that creates sound can be music, to well, yeah, the popular, pop music, rock and roll, or okay, he was obsessed with doo-wop, but that's probably something from his childhood that just, he couldn't get rid of that that loop in his mind. But yeah, the serious endeavor of his musical reach, right? His musical reach was so expansive to include and even praise, Edgar Varese on one hand, and I don't know, Little Richard on the other.
Yeah. It's really well put. And we'll get into music really quick. Just a couple more questions in regards to your background. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Yeah, they raised me in the Jewish tradition. Mm-hmm.
Do you pray?
I have prayed. Yeah. Yeah, I have prayed. I don't know who I'm praying to.
Yeah.
To the wind, maybe.
I like that. The wind. Okay, so if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
See, I told you so.
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Yes to both.
And then really the hidden question there, David, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I set up with a few modern thinkers. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Mm-hmm.
JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Yeah, I could see how some people are taking that position because right, they say no, bad publicity is better than no publicity. So the more you feed that ghost or that was it the orange demon?
Yeah.
Right, the more you talk about him, the more he's there. So we don't even have to mention his name.
Right.
So yeah, I believe that part is true, but you can't pretend, or maybe you can pretend that the enemy is not there, and just transcend that whole quagmire of they've got hooks on you, but no, they don't have any hooks on you because you're not even thinking of them, and you're beyond that. You're full of air, and there's nothing to hook on to.
It's a great metaphor. I really love it. And in regards to bad publicity line, I've got to tell you, you probably might have heard this John Cage line. He said, it doesn't matter what they say in your the review of your work. It's how thick your press kit is. Like, never mind what they say in the critical, write-ups. So it's sort of the same thing. So you sort of implied this, but at your Uncle Irving is bringing home these instruments.
Right.
At what point in your life, like what's the tipping point sort of the history briefly of your listening. You're growing up listening to what? Radio, live musicians, vinyl, or what that's sort of gaining your interest to pursue music. And then where's the tipping point? You said, I want to do that.
The first record I bought was Agnes, the Teenage Russian Spy. And I guess I played saxophone for a while, and then I had my appendix out and I couldn't blow the horn. That was in elementary school. So I've been playing music for a very long time. What was the question?
Then what's the tipping point where you said, like, that's my calling in life, is to be a musician?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Like both composer. I mean, would you say you're a percussionist and a composer? That's your two main things, or multi-instrumentalist?
I'd have to say multi-instrumentalist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm becoming more well known as a theremin player.
There you go. I see.
But yeah, I play a lot of different instruments, and for a while I was playing the Chinese zither, the guchang.
Yeah.
I play gamelan, it is a percussion instrument, but I also have done a lot of work on the slide guitar, prepared slide guitar, putting objects on the strings.
Yeah.
There's what else? Yeah, then there's the electronic music. The laptop is a realm of instruments. But I was starting to tell you the trajectory.
Right, that's it.
Of my playing, of my involvement in music, which led to that tipping point. Okay, yeah. So I was, I had the vibraphones, and then it was like really too high for me. I was too small for that, although I did have a xylophone I could play. Then saxophone was great until 4th grade, and I had my appendix out and I couldn't blow the horn, yakety sax and all that. And then the Beatles came out while I was still in junior high school, I guess. So I picked up the drums and started playing the drums. And I did my first gig on television on Zachary Disco Team. Do you know who Zachary was?
I don't, but it sounds like what kind of child TV host?
Well, he was a monster movie host.
Oh, monster movie. Okay.
Yeah, Zachary. He was maybe an East Coast phenomenon. He hosted monster movies, and then he had a radio show, like FM, rock music, Zachary. But he also had a teen disco television show on Channel 47. This was not cable. This was UHF. This was back in the day. Anyway, my junior high school band played at that, and that was my first gig. I was just at my my high school 50th high school reunion.
Nice.
And people, the girls there were telling me, I remember we all got into a bus in 7th grade, and they took us down to Newark, New Jersey, to the TV studios, and we danced while your band played. It's so great that we could share that memory, and I didn't even remember, like, wow, the whole school got into it. And my parents had to go to a bar to find a TV that had Channel 47 on it, and they saw me playing live in my band. I think we were called the Cavaliers.
How cool.
Yeah. So I don't know if that was a tipping point, but that was actually my first professional gig. It wasn't paid, but anyway, that led me.
You studied with Bergamo. Did you study with John Bergamo and Alan Dawson? So
yeah, that's right.
Was these drum sets? We were studying more percussion or more playing like jazz drumming or classical drumming?
Yeah, well, Alan Dawson was a jazz drummer, of course. Yeah, and he was the teacher of Tony Williams, also.
Yeah. Yes.
So, great, one of the greatest.
One of them.
Yeah. I also studied, I guess, symphonic percussions, and with Bergamo, John Bergamo, it was the whole realm of percussion, including a lot of contemporary or new music or avant-garde music was written for percussion. The early John Cage pieces, Construction in Metal, the Lou Harrison pieces, the Harry Partch. That's a whole topic we can get into. And then Bergamo also taught tabla. And that's a whole other universe. But these are all part of the universe of percussion, which is a very huge area.
Yeah, Bergamo had a role in Frank writing the song "The Black Page," which is a sort of famous percussion piece of Frank. So a screen. So we're going to get into music now. And David, thank you so much. A screenwriting teacher told me that great art or great music is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you're composing a David piece of music, you're not commissioned. You're composing something for David by David. What role does intention play in the creative process?
Well, intentionality itself is that's practically the reason for being, right? And you have to imbue something with intentionality in order to have it have any meaning, at least to yourself and hopefully to other people. So yeah, you do imbue it with intentionality. For sure. Does that answer the question, or did I?
Sure. No, that answers the question. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much do you think of your listener when you're composing your piece?
How much do I think of the listener? There are times when I think of the listener. There are times, and it's some people will understand it, some people will get it, and some people won't get it. I have to acknowledge that my music doesn't. It's not instantly recognizable. It's not. You can't always place. You can't always place it. Where do I put this on the shelf of my musical experiences? There's not necessarily a reference point to that, and I'm actually exploring that area quite a bit to see if I can define a new genre, right? If I can develop a new genre, is that possible? Can you be what's the word? Defamiliarize. I like to use that term in my teachings. To defamiliarize is to let go of all the biases that you have, whether it's gender bias or racial or nationality or religion. If I don't know if it's possible for us to, completely relinquish all our biases, but if we can attempt that, where do we go from there? Then the antenna is tuning into a really wide frequency band, right?
It's really good. Yeah, I think that's what Zappa did. It reminds me of what you just said is he was an alchemist. He took two known things and put them together and came up with a third unknown thing. So it was like theater and rock. So he invented theatrical rock. And it was similar to Preston Sturges, who did two sort of known things and came up with screwball comedy. But both of them did a unique thing. Once they invented their new genre, they satirized their own new genre. So, right. I go gung-ho with you pursuing a new genre. I mean, that's what's needed, because we settle into certain norms and then we use those to define where we can go. What's the function of music?
To provide a contrast to silence.
Yeah, it's good. And Copeland defines What?
Yeah. Okay, that's all. I could say a million different things there, but I don't know if it.
Well, you can embellish, go on and detail more if you like. I mean,
Yeah.
the contrast to silence is brilliant. I mean, that's good.
Well, there's also to drown out the noise.
Yeah.
With your own noise, with your own sounds. Oh, to what? Oh yeah, I have this. I wrote an essay on gong culture. Gong culture.
Yeah.
Mostly like the Southeast Asian or Eastern Asian gongs culture. And one of the early quotes I used was the practice of using a gong to notify the gods that you are there, notify the spirits that you are there, right? And I guess it has been said in the mystical arts, if you know the name of a spirit, you call the name. I call the name and they will appear, right? They won't appear unless, I mean, if you want them to appear, you have to know their name, I guess. Or if you make enough sound, they will appear and say, what's that racket? So calling the spirits is another thing.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, Mickey Hart, the drummer for the Dead, said, it's to communicate someone's coming to steal our food, and another person said the function of music is to dance, and another person said to keep us from going insane. But this one I like you just said was to drown out the noise with your own noise. This is in 1969, the LA Free Press was interviewing Frank Zappa, and they said, you mentioned Pauline Oliveira's work with sound above the audio and below, creating a mass. And Frank says, not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a sum indifference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range. By combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle that you could hear. Whether or not you like what you hear in the middle is another question. The concept is brilliant. So any thoughts on what Frank described to Pauline Oliveros?
Yes. Well, that's kind of an inaccurate, if you'll excuse me to say it, description or definition of the difference tone. The difference tone is when you have two extremely high notes that are just a little bit different than each other, right? Let's say one is at 900, 9,000, and the other one's at 875,000.
Yeah.
The difference is going to be like 25, which is very, very low, very low.
Yeah.
So the difference tone is the low tone, which is produced by two very high tones.
That's interesting. Who's set that up, calling it the difference tone? Is that you, or is that
that's just mathematics, right? You subtract 9 from 10.
Yeah.
What do you get? What's the difference?
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
That's just mathematics.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because Thelonious Monk said that music.
Hello? Uh-oh.
Yeah. Thelonious. Hello. Yeah. Thelonious Monk said music is math. Is mathematics. Yeah.
Mathematics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Copeland says the 4 elements of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. In layperson's terms, how would you describe what is tone color?
Timbre.
But in layperson's, like someone might not know.
Flavor.
Flavor. That's a good word. I've never heard that one. Flavor. So how do you navigate, David, those four elements? Are you more emphasizing one or the other? Do you start off any rituals in your composing with one or the other? Just discuss the use of melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color.
Okay. It is possible to have music without melody, without rhythm. If it's more than one note at a time, then you will have harmony. But if it's only a single note sustained, if it's a pure sine wave, then you won't have any of those qualities. So you'd have to add to that. You have two sine waves, or a sine wave and a square wave. Okay, you have timbre, and you have harmony because you have two notes. And let's say the notes are close enough to each other that you get these beating tones, which is different than a difference tone. The beating tones is when they create an out of phaseness, right? They're not going to lock in. They're going to be out of phase. They're going to create rhythms. And there are artists that Marianne Amershay, for example, who was exploring the rhythms inside our eardrums when certain notes are being played, certain tones are being played at the appropriate volume, and it creates these beating tones in the air that we feel in our eardrums. So she's playing our eardrums.
Wow. How do you spell her name?
Marianne.
Yep.
AMACHER.
Thank you. That's amazing. Is that like binaural beats?
Yeah, something like that. Something like that.
Yeah. And she's contemporary doing that?
Unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago. She slipped on the ice and hit her head.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad you taught me about her. That's amazing. And you brought up the word notes. And back to Thelonious Monk, he said there are no wrong notes. Any comment?
Wrong is right.
Miles Davis talks about the space between notes. How do you navigate dynamics or the space between notes?
Well, I could tell you this, that I've written pieces, really totally notated, and I told the musicians to make sure you play the rests exactly as written. So if it's a dotted eighth note, then, if it's like a 16th note followed by a dotted eighth note rest, you better dampen, and play that, articulate the rests.
Yes.
So that's important. Don't let everything just ring out and, all the time, but articulate the rests. And that way you're creating, phraseology, right? You're creating phrase and breathing space.
Yeah. I wrote an essay on silence in 2013, and you were generous enough to contribute a quote. And I wanted to set it up and have you comment. There's a Cage scholar who called 433 the noise piece. He said it should be called the noise piece. But Pacific Film Archives curator Steve Said called it the noise canceling composition. And sometimes it's called the silent piece or the silence piece. And then here's what musician David agrees, saying it's about, quote, here's your quote, the sounds inside our heads while the concert is progressing. What sounds did we want to hear, and how did we fill the silence?
Yeah, there's of course the expectations of someone sitting at a keyboard. What do you expect to hear? And but there's also all the sounds in the room. I mean, the Pauline Oliveros deep listening is all about that. Listen to the sounds in the listen to the people shuffling their feet, getting a little bit anxious, listening to them rustling their programs, trying to fill the void with some information, listening to the in the case of the premiere of 433 was the sound of rain on the roof.
Yeah.
Then listen to the cars going by outside of the building, right? What's happening inside your head, what's happening inside the room, all the sounds, what's happening just outside the room in the building, what are the sounds happening outside of the building, and what are, this is the whole Pauline Oliveros deep listening. So I think what Cage was pointing out, I mean, aside from the theatrical and conceptual leap that he would make there, is that the music isn't necessarily just the sounds that the composer or the musician makes, but it's also how it resonates inside the listener's head.
Yeah.
Or that's, body by that token.
Yeah, or their body. It's interesting because that piece 433 charted on the English pop charts once.
So you say.
Oh, it did. It's in the Wikipedia entry, and they also charted the Bulgarian.
Right? It's in Wikipedia. That must be true.
Say it again.
If it's in Wikipedia, it must be true, right?
It's got to be true. That's a Zappa line. If it's in Rolling Stone, it's got to be true. But also, the Bulgarians women choir charted on the English pop charts once. Yeah. So, but here's a question they asked McLuhan once, and I asked you. I haven't asked this in years. Will there ever be silence? And that's I saw Laurie Anderson answer that exact same way to a question related, but it's he said, McLuhan said, things don't exist on their own, they exist in relationship. Mm-hmm. So in essence, when John Cage was put in that chamber, he couldn't hear silence because he heard two things: his blood pumping and his central nervous system working. So you can't hear silence literally, but I always go, me and you could get if we were in Southern California here in Venice, we could get in a van and drive 45 minutes to the desert and then walk 15 minutes and sit in the middle of the desert and hear silence. I've done it. I literally feel that I'm hearing silence, but I'm not. I'm hearing the relationship of the car noise for 45 minutes to my ears, and then our feet walking on the ground for 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So what?
No insects flying nearby?
Yeah, let's say there's no insects or birds flying by. We think we're hearing silence, but it's more the relationship of what's gone around our ears in the last hour.
Yeah. You'd have to really empty your mind to hear the silence. But I'll tell you a funny anecdote, if I may.
Please.
I teach a course in the college called Cross-Cultural Perspectives, and I'll ask a question to the class, and based on, like, say, the readings that they were supposed to have done. I'll ask a question, and then I'll hear complete silence. I mean, that is the ultimate Zen silence. And I would just say, after listening to that for about, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds, I would just say, that was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, class. That was the most beautiful moment of Zen.
That's McLuhan saying the gap is where the action is. When COVID hit, I would ride my bike and it was like no cars, nothing. and I rode my bike the other day, and it was this rainy season here, and I heard nothing, no bike noise, no traffic noise. It was amazing that I could feel like I was hearing silence, you know.
But you said it was raining?
Well, no, it wasn't raining when I was riding, but the rain season, or maybe it was because it was the holidays. There was no traffic out. There was nothing. You know, it was early in the morning. So
Okay.
I like that feel. But I'm curious, David, your feeling on this. My friend says the 3 T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. So technique, you've learned how to play the theremin, let's say. The theory is you know what chords, or you know how to write music out, score it. How does one acquire taste?
How does one acquire taste?
Yeah.
I'm not so sure one can acquire taste. One can taste taste. One can feel it and hear it.
But let's say, yeah, like you gravitated towards Frank and maybe didn't gravitate towards Barry Manilow or whatever. You know, there's certain, you know, you would say, well, I have a taste for that. You know, it might be the word aesthetics, or your choice. It's like choice. You know what?
You know, this whole question of taste is too relative. It's like saying what is real and what is not real. What is taste and what is bad taste, and why is something so bad that it's good, right? Something that's in bad taste done in a certain way is just perfectly timed or whatever, you know. There's just too many variables there for in taste.
No, I understand. That's good, because
there's this personal stuff, you know. It's just not my taste, right?
Yeah, it's like when Frank heard the Shags in a radio station, he wanted to take the record. You know, he says, this is my kind of music. And, you know, it's regarded as, you know, the worst music in the history of the world. But if you look at,
what was their hit song?
Well, they didn't have any hits. It's called The Philosophy of the World. Is one album, and definitely look it up. I mean, that when Terry Adams from NRBQ put him on Rounder Records, it's like, it's outsider music, and it's they're the worst band in the history of the world. Let's just say that. And then on the back of the album, it's like Bonnie Raitt, Elvis Costello, Carla Bley, and Frank all saying this is the best and most pure music ever. You know, but the normal listener will freak and go, get that off. It's horrible. So, anyways, it's worth pursuing for a couple minutes. Put it on YouTube, the Shags, and listen. But here's the lead up to the taste word. McLuhan said that song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. So I'm curious, you've explored world music. How do you process that line? And I'll say it again if you want.
No, I agree totally with that. The language is you know, the way that different cultures use language and their use of certain words to denote a concept or an idea, and then the written word. These are really very curious phenomenon. What was it? I wrote this essay on the mythology of words because, you know, I studied McLuhan a lot, and he said the origin of written language was what was it? Plant the dragon's teeth in the ground, and they will assemble an army of meaning. And I don't know what they're going to do with that meaning. Probably plunder the world. And whatever they do with that. But there's also the feeling of the tongue, right? The tongue. We speak of the language as speaking in tongues. You know, what is your language? Your tongue. The tongue tastes, right? It tastes.
Yeah.
food, and it's used to articulate words. So
Yeah.
we have this synesthetic process, like in relation to, right, the written word. The concept, the concept of time is so different from one language to another. And I use the example of the Balinese, jam karet, rubber time, right? They have this concept of time. So you're waiting for the bus, it's late. What are you going to do? You're going to fret. You're going to get all anxious and upset, or just say, jam karet, rubber time. Just deal with it. Do something else. What are you going to do with that time? You have some extra time now. You're being given the gift of more time because the bus is so late. So then it's a happy, or not necessarily happy, but it's just a different way of dealing with it. And the words, you know, for what was it? The private property, in some cultures, they don't acknowledge that there even is such a thing as private property, or who owns the land. The land you can't own. How do you own land? The land is there. We're just taking care of caretakers for the next generation, or, you know, destroyers or whatever. But there's just so much that language has to do with music, and language of music, of course, is a language, a universal language.
Well, you anticipated perfectly this question, but the two things before I asked it, the two things you evoked for me there was, there's a line that goes, property is theft. And the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
Okay.
So that you anticipated this question and you suss it out. What's more fundamental, language or music?
There's that more word again.
Yeah.
Take out the more, and then what do you have?
What's fundamental, music or language?
Yes.
Tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
An instrumental, it could be an instrumental within, I always love Spike Jones.
I know I get Spike Jones a lot, but there's a lot of words in there. But yeah, that's a good answer. Spike Jones is amazing, huge influence on Frank, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I could tell. I mean, I could tell.
Yeah. So this is the music writer Ben Ratliff. He says, I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be at best heard in a single note. So me and you might hear a guitar note by Frank and go, oh, that's Frank. Or we hear a couple notes by Miles and go, oh, that's Miles, or that's Train. So Ben would use two words. He said, Miles is fragile and pointed. Coltrane is slightly undercooked and urgent. If a music writer was describing David's sound, what two words would you feel they got it? Or, you know, sort of, you would be honored that they use those two words.
I once had a review in Germany, in Frankfurt, and the reviewer called it a fine translucent spider web.
Oh, that's good. Fine translucent spider web
of sound.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so Anthony Burgess, who is also a musician and a composer besides being a novelist, he said, we must now ask some very different questions about the relationship between music and life. What question remains unresolved for you in regards to music in your life?
What question remains unresolved?
Yeah. Or is there any questions that remain unresolved for you?
All the
In the-
questions. Yeah. All the questions are unresolved. They're all open. They're all open to interpretation.
right. What's more oh, I can't ask more. Okay, we'll skip that one. What was the function? What was the motive of the cave artist? And, you know, the sad thing is we really don't have cave music. We don't have cave dance documented, but somehow we've got cave art documented. So when I say what was the motive of the cave artist, I mean the musicians and the dancers too. Just your hunch or your guess. What was their motive?
Motive in what? In making cave music?
In making cave art or making cave music, yeah.
Well, some of the cave art was, I am here. I was here, right?
Yeah.
If they have their mouth full of berry juice and they put their hand on the rock and spit it out and they leave their handprint, I was here. And the dolmen, right? The 3 rocks, 2 vertical and 1 horizontal on top. It could delineate an area, like this is my zone, my area, or just say I was here. Humans were here. Because only humans can do that.
But why do you think humans need to do that?
Excuse me, I have to turn the heat down. I'll be right back.
Sure.
Because that's our nature.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Hopefully it's in some language that I can understand. If it doesn't make it, if I don't make it too difficult for me to understand it, then it could just be words of somebody like whispering in your ear, hey, watch out for that thing that's coming at you. Or I don't know, sometimes it's or visual images, you know, sometimes it's words, my own voice or someone else's voice. It could be anything, man. It could be a big rock, you know, an image. But I did want to say this thing about the rock. We were talking about cave art.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I saw this cartoon once. There's a cartoon called Primitive Music.
Yeah.
And it was a guy at a caveman, right, with a music stand in front of him, and some guys with like 2 rocks.
Yeah.
And the score that he was conducting was like one giant note, one big note that was almost as big as the entire page.
Yeah.
And that's what primitive music was. Before they divided it up into smaller notes, you know.
Notes, yeah.
Big rock.
That's
Gestalt.
That's the Gestalt. That's pure Zappa. He called it the big note. He said the big note is every piece of music I play, every interview I do, everything I do is just the big note. So two of my film heroes say they're ignore yourself. That's their mantra. Jonas Mika says there is no self-expression. And the great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me.
Right.
Please excuse the word more, but I have to ask it. And you can put the the question into the context you want. Is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever technology, cultures, or environments are dominant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you have the ability, then you can sort of become a medium, right? The artist becomes a medium for the forces of nature or for different concepts to come through and be manifested, right? By the artist. And it's not about, like my one of my composition teachers, James Tenney. He had, his career was, his ethos was that this is not about self-expression.
Yes.
He doesn't care who cares what I feel?
Yeah.
He's more like the antenna of the race and or of the planet, right? And he is showing us how acoustics work, how sound works, how architecture works, how our perceptions work, right? So it's not about self-expression for him. And I guess he was, what did I say? He was he was obsessed, obsessed with not expressing himself. That was his form of his style of music, but that's not for everyone, right? There are those that, the Romantics era, is very self-expression, and most of the stuff we hear is about people expressing themselves. But if you can hear, when the tide rushes in, plants a kiss on the shore, right? I mean, that's a beautiful image that has, we can interpret it. Yeah. Oh, I've had that experience, but it's not necessarily about any one person's self-expression. It's like a universal and personal, possibly at the same time.
Yeah. Can art making, music making be egoless?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a real fine line in the moment of performance to be both mastering your instrument and stepping aside so that the music can flow through you.
Yeah.
It's master and surrender.
It's good. Master and surrender both. Yeah. I asked Don Preston, who's played avant-garde music with Carla Bley and was a member of Frank Zappa's band. He says, don't think, drop yourself out of the picture. But it's, he still has this language inside his head, this reference. And how do you abandon? As Fireside Theater said so well, everything you know is wrong. How do you abandon everything you know? How do you, uninform yourself, or what do they, there's a word for that, forget everything you know. You're asking a lot.
Well, that's the defamiliarization.
Yeah, that's, your word is better. Defamiliarize. Yeah.
Yeah. Take what you see, what you're very familiar with, and then just imagine that you're seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
How would you approach it without any bias?
Defamiliarize. Is perception reality?
Absolutely.
David, tell me one major element of your creativeness in music that's changed, and one major element that's stayed the same in the years you've been doing this.
One that's remained the same and one that's changed?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't been playing very much music lately. And maybe since I moved out of the city, up here to the suburbs of New York. And I sort of quit the various groups that I was playing with to focus more on solo work. And then I end up just not playing very much music. but I am writing music and recording it and editing it, and I think I'm playing a lot less music now than I ever was. So that's changed. Also, I have I can say I'm not saying that I'm finished writing music or playing music, but I feel like I have created some things that I wanted to create. I made some things that I really had been thinking about for a long time, and I managed to do them and surprise myself in the process. But it's like I don't have to do that again, and I could look at it and listen to it and enjoy it. Yeah.
Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Oh God. Well, I can't sing, as you probably heard a few moments ago. So I'm really bad at singing, but I'm in sight singing? You know, so elementary training in musicianship is you're supposed to be able to sing, you know, read a note and sing, or hear a note and write it down. And what I came up with, my transcription of what I heard, maybe is a mirror of prismatic hearing, right? And that concept, I think I wrote, you used a little bit of my quotes on prismatic hearing in your paper on silence, that you can't, what was it? You can't, I don't know, you just can't teach me how to hear other than the way that I hear, right? So,
right.
If I try and draw, you know, someone blindfolded me at a party and said, you know, just walk a straight line and, you know, what is it, pin the tail on the donkey or something like that? I veered off immediately to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, I had had a few drinks and, you know, whatever, but I was not about to walk a straight line. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't have to drive anywhere.
Yeah, don't drink while you drive. You might hit a bump and spill your drink.
Okay. I just read that the guy who went over the cliff on the California coast in a Tesla did it on purpose with all his family in there. Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that, but that is spooky news. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I try to do something, anyway, this is a long way of saying if I try to do something normal, I'll probably end up doing something really skewed. And that would be my comment on normalcy.
Yeah. No, that you answered it well.
But because that's my nature.
Yeah. So we got about 10 more minutes. I really appreciate your time, David. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Well, I do think the physical informs the emotional. Yeah, women are generally more emotional than men, and how they deal with their emotions. But I don't know. I mean, I think men and women have varying amounts of the opposite sex within them, within their psyche anyway. So there doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to draw a line there. There's I mean, can a woman write masculine music? I'm asking you. Jerry, can a woman write music?
I would refer to John Cage. That's a very good question. I wouldn't want to ruin it with an answer.
Okay.
But it's a touchy question. I abandoned it for a while because I was getting in trouble by asking it, but I appreciate your thoughts on it. How do you find peace of mind?
I find it delightful.
Yeah, that is a good answer. On what occasion do you lie?
When the truth won't do.
Bunwell said, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. 80% of people I say that to go, yeah, I agree. And one person finally said, that's bullshit. If I'm gonna seek something, it's because I want to find it. If the cliche goes, the journey's more important than the destination, why do we have to seek or name a destination if the journey's more important?
What you mean, like getting there is half the fun, right?
Well, that's sort of how, like McLuhan says, from cliche to archetype, that's how the cliche is gone, that the journey is more important than the destination. And the way you worded it is similar. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have an answer to that. If it was a question.
That's fine. Can you forget to die?
Yes. I did that today.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I'll have to think about that one.
No worries. That's Dr. John, the great New Orleans pianist. I asked him all these questions, and when I got to that one, he said, I won't go there. He felt that was like a little too voodoo or something. So, David, these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions just off the top of your head in a couple words. 1, who started it all?
Alan Watts?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean that's your answer, or you're asking?
Yeah, Alan Watts.
That's very good. I've never had anyone say that. That's smart. Are we going to make it?
No.
Where do we put it?
Behind us.
Who's cleaning it up?
The next person.
Is it serious?
Never.
It's good. Frank Zappa said, I'm very serious about being not serious.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he employed what's called satire, and I'm curious your response to this. I would ask a question, can satire be destructive? And we know if you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill you, some people think dying is destructive. So my friend who wrote comedy for Robin Williams, I said, can satire be destructive? He says, that's the job of satire. And Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. And then Frank saying the line, watch the Nazis run your town. Now go home and check yourself. You think we're singing about somebody else. The basic question is, David, what's the function of satire?
Wow. I think it does help us to see ourselves, right? Yeah. You say it's about everyone else except ourselves, but no, I mean, that's how you're not seeing yourself, right?
Yeah.
That's the mistake of it. Yeah, satire is, no, it's great. It's really important that we are able to make fun of ourselves and see ourselves in a step out of our own self-referentiality, right? And see us from an objective point of view, like, wow, that's ridiculous. Look what I'm doing. And I think satire really helps in that realm.
Yes, I saw Frank sing Broken Hearts Are for Assholes in Las Vegas, of all places. And he's pointing at people in the audience. You're an asshole. You're an asshole. And at one point, he pointed at himself and goes, "You're an asshole."
Mm-hmm.
Which way?
We are the other people. We are the other people. You're the other people, too.
It's a great, great line, isn't that?
Yeah.
Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
As long as it's at least double ply, it doesn't matter.
Nice. There you go. You're quoting the great Zappa associate Captain Beefheart. The poem goes, his poem goes like this: "The stars are matter, we are matter, but it doesn't matter."
Oh, is that the end of it?
That's it. It's a short poem.
Oh, okay. I guess the fish have all the scales.
There you go. I like this.
That's
so. Yes. There's a line, David, that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into "You are what you hate." James Joyce says, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve." And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist."
Right.
Any thoughts on this line? You create what you resist. And I'm not saying you, David, like one creates what one resists. You create what you resist. Any thoughts on that line?
You create what you resist.
Yeah.
Do you mean you create a resistance to something?
Well, the way the wording is you create what you resist. So again, it's how, whatever context you want to put it in, or however you interpret it. I've never really sourced out who said that, but it's another way it says is what you resist persist, or like Bob Goldthwait, you are what you hate. It's I think
a fear, like the fear factor, right?
Yeah.
You create a fear, and then that fear kind of rules you, and then you're ruled by your fear, right?
That's I think a good interpretation of that. Mm-hmm. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Off the top of my head.
That's the title. You're saying that's the title? That's a good title. I've been waiting for someone to say that for years.
Really?
Oh yeah. They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell would it be?
What? Say that again.
The publisher wants to scent the glue in the binding of your autobiography. What smell?
Armadillo.
If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
At the bottom of a lake, coral.
Nice. Coral at the bottom of the lake. We just got a few more, David. We're out of here. Thank you so much. Please tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good that I never had that I never want.
Yep.
Something good that I never had that I never want. More than two parents.
That is a good answer. I've never had that. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Pull the plug.
Oh, pull the plug, man. You're knocking them out of the park. I've never had that answer. That's obvious. Pull the plug. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Young people to take more responsibility at saving the planet from destruction.
Dude, I get that answer a lot. Is that a fine answer? I think we should go back one step. Your book title could be Pull the Plug. I like that.
Admittedly, I've used that line in an opera that Lisa Carr and I wrote, "The Birth of George," where what's it called? Dream Gun, the Traumkanon, the song within the opera. You know, it's when there's a 5-car collision and all the people in the cars are in a hospital and they're all in a coma, but then they have a collective dream that they are characters in this like vaudeville show. And it's partially built on this Philip K. Dick Ubik Half-Life. But one of them is, because they're on life support, and the guy is saying, pull the plug, and, a virus created me, an enzyme will destroy me. Pull the plug, pull the plug. So whatever little consciousness is left in them, they want, end it. Pull the plug. The Birth of George. If you, I don't know, did Lisa send you a copy of that?
Yes, she did. I will definitely listen to it. CDs are hard. CDs are harder and harder to play these days. That's the problem.
CDs are hard to play, yeah.
But anyways, I have heard your music on YouTube and heard your collaborations with Lisa, and they've been amazing. And I appreciated Lisa doing these same interview, and big thank to Hank Rosenfeld for introducing me to both of you. But let's do a bonus question, because you brought up Philip K. Dick. He loved Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, call it memory theater. And McLuhan broke the Finnegan's Wake code by figuring out that Joyce was, we all have these, we all have the ability to create these scenarios in the middle of the night called dreaming. But artists, not to sound elitist, but artists also dream while they're awake. So it's dream awake. What have dreams played a role in your creative process in writing?
Oh, absolutely. Oh,
yeah.
That's where I get a lot of my ideas from. In fact, complete pieces, finished pieces, sometimes I witness them or or perform them. And then the struggle is to recreate it, what I heard in my dreams. I get that a lot of times. And I've been, like I said, I haven't been playing a whole lot of music lately. And of course, with the COVID lockdown, most concerts just stopped on a dime, but they're gradually coming back. But during that time, I would have these dreams of performing. And I've had incredible pieces of music come to me in dreams that I, really try my best to translate into the physical realm.
But what's the process? Do you wake up in the morning and take notes, or wake up during the middle of the night, or it's all memory? How is it? Is there dream journals involved, or?
Yeah, sometimes I have a dream journal. Sometimes I just wake up in the middle of the night and maybe tell Lisa, like, you won't believe the dream I just had, and I'll say it to her, and she'll remember it. Luckily, because I will not have remembered it. But at other times, I'd be like conducting a piece in my sleep. Someone would see me doing that, and then I'd know what I was doing. But I'll tell you, some dreams just are so amazing that I can't possibly forget them ever.
That's good.
And someday I'll tell you about that when I write my book. What's it called?
Please.
What's it called?
Pull the plug.
No, the other one, off the top of my head.
Oh, off the top of my head. Yeah, you could do off the top of my head. That's a good title.
All right.
So
plug will be the sequel.
There you go. You might as well. Now, Thornton Wilder said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. David, you laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Right now, it's all about getting through the next, I don't know, 20 years. However, how much I have left, I don't know. My father lived to 97. And he had some memories of places that he's never been.
Yeah.
So that was in the memory unit. But what was the question again?
What's it really all about for you? And you said getting through the next 20 years. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
But to go on your dad for a second, do you think his longevity was a more lifestyle choice or more DNA?
Well, Lisa and I have a theory that he was so cheap that he didn't want to, spend any money if he couldn't have to. And while he was still alive, he wanted to live all the life that he could before, giving up the ghost. So he was too cheap to die.
Too cheap to die. That's another good title for a book. Too cheap, and you could spell it CHEEP like a bird. Too cheap to die. Well, I'm glad you got a chuckle out of this, David. It's really been fun. The last question is, what gives you the most optimism? Ending. There you go. The first question is what is the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being. And the last question is I got from when they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, what gives you the most optimism? And he said, other people. Mm-hmm. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person. Thank you so much, David. I hope our dialogue can continue on forever and ever, even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button. Thank you so much.
There's been a lot of interesting questions and hopefully some interesting answers.
Very good.
Okay.
I had a ball. Thank you so much, David.
And thank you.